On today's show, we're joined by Locked On Bucks' own host, Kane Pitman. We got lots of stuff to talk about, including what's Jason Kidd like as a coach?
Kane's going to give us all the answers.
All the lowdown from Down Under on Locked On Mavs.
Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Hey, Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good! And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
And welcome. You're locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and coordinator for the Locked On Podcast Network. And joining me, as always, my co-host, writer and insider at Mavs.com, the Buck boy, the One More Thing King. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
Oh, well, before I introduce Kane, I want to give a shout out to my favorite person in the entire world. Tread
carefully with this statement that you're about to make.
Today's the anniversary for my wife and I. It's 8 years of marriage, and she listens to the pod. And I just want to say she's my best friend. And it's been 8 strong years. So happy anniversary. Love you, honey. But thank you for liking it and subscribing to the YouTube channel.
No, come on, get out. No, stop. We have not sold out that much that we're going to leverage your anniversary shout out.
But my second favorite person in the world is Kane Pitman, who's joining us today. Sorry, Nick.
Yeah, you really set me up there, which I should probably be used to by now. I was thinking about this last time we came on the show together, and it is always a fun time. But last time, speaking of Down Under, Nick did throw me under the bus last time with a tweet I had about Luka Doncic, which, by the way, came
Down Under. I was like, I know it's my anniversary, but I mean, we're...
It came soon after the Bucks played the Mavericks. All I did was suggest that perhaps Luka Doncic, as his career moves on, will learn to, control the emotions a little bit more, something along those lines. And he tried to set the Luka Doncic masses on me. And I will say that for the most part, Dallas Mavericks fans were very kind and perhaps even a little bit understanding, but there certainly was some anger involved with that. But here I am again. I'm ready to do it all over. Let's see who I can enrage on this podcast.
Yeah. It's almost like a sibling thing. You can't make fun of my brother. I only can make fun of my sibling, right? Like that was what it felt like almost.
So, Kane, give us your hottest take on Jason Kidd.
No, come on. Today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com. Tell them that Locked On sent you. On today's show, we have Kane Pitman from Locked On Bucks. We're going to talk about the Dirk Giannis comparison. Is there something from 2011, the stars that ended up staying with their teams? I think there's a really interesting connection there. Obviously, we'll get into the Jason Kidd stuff. What was he like as a coach? All that kind of stuff. Is there a real Giannis connection? Kind of the one huge redeeming quality of Jason Kidd so far from people that have tried to pitch him as a good coach is, well, look what he did with Giannis. And so we'll get into that. And Jason Kidd's already mentioned it a couple times, his relationship with Giannis, and talked about Miran Fader's book as well. Jason Kidd was on the record talking about that. You're not going to want to miss that. So, Kane, let's get into it. How is the championship offseason feeling, right? Like, it's got to be a great feeling. We remember it fondly in 2011.
Are you still hungover?
Yeah, I'm just rolling through guest after guest, and I just get them on. They just tell me what they can actually physically remember from Game 6 of the NBA Finals, and then we go through there. Occasionally, we go back and think, oh, man, that was a dark episode we had when Giannis hurt his knee. I mean, it was a roller coaster ride. I'll say this. In previous years that we've been doing Locked On Bucks, and you go through the playoffs, and obviously the conference finals run went for a little bit longer, but it is a grind. I don't know how the players show up for all those games, but I was fatigued podcasting after all those games. The playoffs go for so long, man, so long.
They do. They just keep grinding, and you just keep doing show after show, and especially us, we do 5 days a week.
When you look at that finals run, it feels like every single offseason we do a 2011 flashback, and we go through the finals, not just the final series, but we look at the playoff series before. We go through, that was 10 years ago, and we still look back on, Mavericks sweeping the Lakers. We still look back, them going down against Portland in round 1. I'm not expecting you to remember this, Kane, because this is all we have to look back on is this one year. But, we think of the young OKC series, obviously beating LeBron and Wade and those guys in the finals. When you look back at this Milwaukee run, what's going to be like the one or two big moments, but outside of game 6, that you're always going to just kind of look back on and walk through? Is it the Giannis injury that we all looked at and were like, oh my gosh, there's no way? Or are there any other like big moments that you said that's what will stick in the memories of Bucks fans?
Well, I think there's the big moments. There's the Giannis block that happened in the finals, and there was the Drew Holiday steal and the lob, like those ones. But they're things that everyone's going to remember. I think that we'll probably sit back and think about how we were all feeling and how we were all discussing the series against Brooklyn when in game 2, you're on the road and you're actually losing that game by 49 points. So not only do you go down 2-0, you're losing the game by 49 points. And we were discussing it, and we always try to be pretty realistic about what the team's doing, how they're playing, what their chances are for the rest of the series. And I remember we just did the podcast and said, look, realistically, are they winning 4 out of 5 games against Brooklyn? No, probably not. We'll just see what happens in game 3. Maybe they win one of these games and extend it a little bit. But we just assumed the series was over. And for the most part, we probably felt the same in the finals when they went down 2-0. To be able to come back twice from that deficit, win 4 games out of 5, obviously in the finals they won 4 in a row. It's an incredible run. But you mentioned some of the things that you'll remember that only people that cover the team or fans will remember. So for me, the first round, no one's going to remember the Bucks sweeping the Heat. No. But heading into that series, there was such a big mental block. We thought potentially for the Bucks getting over the Heat. So Chris Middleton hits a game winner in overtime in game 1, and then it kind of set things in motion. And guys like Bryn Forbes, that fans around the league aren't going to remember that Bryn Forbes absolutely torched the Heat and scored more points in that series than Jimmy Butler. But I guarantee you, Bucks.
Wait, did he really?
Is that true?
It's a fact, yes.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, Butler was absolute trash, to be clear, but Bryn Forbes was pretty hot.
Bryn Forbes, 15 points a game in that series. Jimmy Butler, 14.5 points a game. That is trash. That's straight up.
Can I ask you a question about before the finals? There was a moment before the finals, before this playoff run, and let's just go to the month before Giannis signs the extension. Where's your mind at? Because
when we were openly recruiting him on this podcast,
when I was in a Bucks media session and the Bucks learned that I was from Mavs.com and they did not let me ask a question in Giannis's over Zoom. I do remember that. They literally asked me, who are you with? And I told them, and they did not let me ask a question. But question. So I just wonder, you don't know if Giannis is signing the extension. Obviously, the Bucks hadn't made the playoff run. They hadn't won the finals yet or any of that. Like, what if Giannis doesn't sign the extension? What if the Bucks don't win the title? What team is Giannis on right now?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think probably we would all assume that he would have gone to a team like the Indiana Pacers and followed Malcolm Brogdon or something like that. Is that what we assume?
Whoa.
Okay. Well, maybe not. Yeah, I think we've spoke about it. We did speak about it. I'm sure I remember that, having the conversation. And I think, for me, Toronto was a team that was concerned. And honestly, for the whole league, thinking about Luka and Giannis playing together, if you take off the Bucks hat, it's pretty damn fun. It's pretty damn fun, right? I mean, come on. But too bad for you guys. You got one superstar. We've got one superstar. It's all fair.
If you're starting a franchise today, would you pick Giannis or Luka?
I would pick Patty Mills, but you guys do whatever you need to do.
Patty Mills. And he's on Brooklyn now. Gosh, how many stars do they need over there in Brooklyn?
It sucks that, as an Australian, I've said this, it's un-Australian to say anything negative about Patty Mills, but it sucks that we're going to have to really hope that he loses this year. It's going to be a tough scene.
This is just a question, maybe just for me. What do Australians think about Ben Simmons? Is he he didn't play for the national team? Does he want to be part of the national team? Does he consider himself Australian? Do you is it a prideful thing to have him, or what's the vibe on him?
Well, I personally would have loved to have him in the Olympics. I mean, he's
For sure.
he's a really damn good basketball player. But I think I would say the mood from casual basketball fans, that all of a sudden want to, drape themselves in an Australian flag and act like the most important thing in the world is playing for the national team. They're like, Ben Simmons sucks. Like, get rid of him. He doesn't want to play for Australia. We don't want him.
Where's Jake
but I would
Landau?
say people, I would say people with a little more nuance would understand that, yes, the team would be much better with him on it. So it's tough for him, though, because Matisse Thybulle is like a national hero now.
Let's go.
Poor old Ben,
But
really
what about
down the rankings.
Before Nick goes into the ad break, what about Josh Green, though? We're like, realistically, what do you think about Josh Green and his future on the Australian national team?
Well, he should be there for the next couple of Olympics. And there was a lot of people and a lot of smart people that thought that he should have been playing minutes in the Olympics purely for the fact that if you look at the guys that were on the Australian roster, Matisse Thybulle really stood out and Dante Exum really stood out because they were the two guys in the team that had NBA caliber athleticism, both defensively and what they can play above the rim. They can do other stuff on offense. So Josh Green was the third guy. Unfortunately, he didn't really crack into that rotation, but I thought there was situations where he probably should have played. So people are optimistic about Josh.
So exactly the same as on the Mavericks. He didn't crack the rotation, but some people thought he probably should have.
Really smart people. First name Bob.
Is that like Bulgaris?
Yeah, sorry. That one went over my head. I have to apologize.
All right, coming up.
Fine.
That's a real deep Mavs joke right there. Coming up, we'll get into the Jason Kidd situation. We'll talk to Kane about it. What does it mean? What is Jason Kidd and Giannis's situation? What is their relationship like? All that kind of stuff. But before we do, let me tell you about Sweatblock. Sweatblock is a new product that's doctor created, doctor recommended, and it helps you with perfusive sweat. It helps you get a dry shirt guarantee. That's exactly what you want if you're dealing with pit stains, if you're dealing with sweat under your armpits, you're dealing with sweat on your lower back. I used it when I went on a trip and I was on a plane for a long time. You sit there, if you're a bigger guy, you sweat a little bit and you come back and you're like, man, you walk off the plane and all of a sudden your shirt is just all drenched in sweat in the back. I didn't deal with that at all when I used Sweatblock. Go there. Sweatblock.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDON and get 20% off. It's been tested by firefighters that go into burning buildings. It's literally been tested by them. You can go check it out. You can also get it at Amazon or CVS, but we recommend going to sweatblock.com. Using that promo code, you'll get 20% off. The promo code is LOCKEDON at sweatblock.com. Also, did you know that 85% of people who play daily fantasy sports lose? Is it really that surprising? The game is rigged against you. You're playing against thousands of other lineups, not to mention experts who have more tools and more time. They're just sitting around drafting all day, doing what they do. You don't stand a chance against those people. Introducing Stat Hero. It's the first ever daily fantasy sports book that puts the player in control and winning within reach. Here's how it works. Stat Hero shows you their lineup and dares you to beat them. It's you versus the house. In a head-to-head fantasy matchup, you name the stakes, winner take all. You have the advantage. Stat Hero is showing you their lineups ahead of time. No one else is doing that. Go to stathero.com/lockedon, sign up free, and right now you can get 3 times back on your first play. They're giving a 300% match. That's unheard of. Go to stathero.com/lockedon, stathero.com/lockedon. All right, Isaac, we're here with Kane Pitman. We're talking about the Bucks, the Mavs, and right now Jason Kidd, who was recently a Milwaukee Bucks head coach, is now coaching the Dallas Mavericks. I was wary about Jason Kidd because of a lot of the things that he did in Milwaukee. Just give us your initial thoughts about Jason Kidd coaching the Mavericks from your perspective of him coaching the Bucks. How is that going to translate in your opinion?
Well, I would like to hope, or I would like to think that coaches are capable of learning and changing.
That's the answer. That's the answer literally everyone has given, right? Like, it's so
Thank
true.
You. Preach the gospel.
But I'm not so optimistic that it's going to be the case. I think, we always speak about this, and this isn't an original take of mine, but I thought that from his time in Milwaukee, it seemed to me that the only players that were really able to understand him or get on the same level of him was either a player like Giannis, who is a complete maniac when it comes to working out, living and breathing basketball, wanting to be the best, wanting to be great, or it was players like new assistant coach Jared Dudley, who was an old school player that was fine with, okay, we're going to sprint all day or whatever it may be. We're going to practice for 6 hours He's old school. He's fine with that. He's been through that. There's just not that many of those players in the league anymore. And so to me, the biggest challenge that it would seem to me from the outside, and I wasn't in Milwaukee when Jason Kidd was there, but just from watching from afar, speaking to people, he's going to have to be better at relationships with different personalities, the modern day player. Because there's no doubt he's a smart basketball mind. There's no doubt about that. But it did seem that the stubbornness and probably not being able to relate to modern day players was his downfall. And I always thought he was a little bit of a Scott Skiles coach in the way that you bring in Jason Kidd, he might have that immediate impact, but then the diminishing returns start to kick in pretty quickly.
It's kind of like a 2-year deal almost, right? Like you bring him in for those 2 years, but after you hold on to him for too long, I'm curious to see how it will last. I'm curious to see how it's going to start to begin with, but even just if it lasts past 2 years, to see how it goes. I think to your answer, I think that's absolutely the case. And I'm so curious. I think Luka, will do fine under him. Unless Jason Kidd tries to start like tweaking different things that Luka tries to do, like Carlisle did, and try and control a little bit too much, then I think we're gonna have a problem. I think Kristaps Porzingis, who is already a big wild card, that is a big wild card for somebody like Jason Kidd. Who are players that you've heard of that had an issue or sort of had problems with Jason Kidd in the past that you've heard of besides Giannis that maybe clashed with him or something like that?
Who is Larry Sanders for 300?
That definitely one of them.
The Larry Sanders stuff was interesting because it was almost hard to remember that Larry Sanders was on the Bucks when Jason Kidd was there because it was so short-lived to remember back to that time. So it was kind of a weird period for the Bucks. And I will say this, I haven't read the book. And Mirren's great. I remember being in Milwaukee when she was coming through a couple of times, and you wonder what she's up to, wonder what she's doing here. It turns out she was writing a Giannis book, so which everyone says is fantastic. I've got one on the way, but I've heard her speak about the Jason Kidd stuff, and she sort of said, I don't think it's totally fair because people just pull out little screenshots. We know how it works, and then it doesn't tell the full picture. So I don't know what to say about that because I haven't read the book, but I will say this: Jabari Parker was a guy that I know for a fact that didn't handle the Jason Kidd stuff too well. And I remember being in Brooklyn a couple of years ago when Jared Dudley was on the Nets. And I spoke to Jared Dudley about Giannis and how he's grown up as a player from the early days and maturing into a leader, controlling his emotions a little bit better. And we asked about Jason Kidd, and he specifically said, and I'm paraphrasing now, I don't have the quote in front of me, but he specifically said that for someone like Giannis, Jason Kidd was great because he was on his ass all the time. Giannis wanted someone that was like that. That probably helped him. And I think in terms of the freedom that he allowed Giannis to play with that point guard, everyone always points to that, but that was good. I think that there's a case to be made that he was good for Giannis's development, but for Jabari Parker, Jared Dudley said that probably wasn't good for him. He probably had never been in that situation. He'd always been the star. All of a sudden he comes to the NBA, he tears his ACL, and now he's got this guy that's constantly on him. And it probably, as Dudley said, made him go into his shell a little bit. And we know for a number of reasons it hasn't worked out for Jabari Parker, which is, a shame. He was a star or an expected star coming into the league. So, again, Jabari, a pretty quiet personality. And that's probably what I come back to when I talk about the different personalities and how he can relate to everyone.
You mean an injury-prone star that can score and maybe do not a lot else?
Hey, you guys know better than me, but I'm curious.
You talk about that relationships with players and just being hard and getting on them and stuff, and how Giannis wanted that. I think something we just don't know, and this is okay to say that we don't know this, and I think this is different than saying like can Luka be coached hard? Because the moment you say that, then people come out like Luka can be coached hard. He likes when when coaches can yell at him and stuff like. I'm not saying he could take that, but what we don't know is how much does he want that constantly, and is Jason still that type of guy? Because what we have also heard is, hey, I took time off from being a head coach. I went to LA for a couple seasons. I won a title in LA as an assistant coach. I've learned, I've changed as a coach, as a human, all of this. But going back to comparing Luka and Giannis, how much of that, how are they similar? How are they different? How much of it is Luka coming in as a superstar to the NBA and literally saying, hey, I think it's easier to score in the NBA than it was in Europe, at the very beginning? How much will he want what Giannis wanted as far as somebody being on his back of saying, push me, yell at me, all of that. And that's just something we just don't know yet.
Yeah, I'm curious about Jason Kidd's experience as an assistant as well, because he says that he's gone away and he's, learned and probably learned from experience. And as I said, who's to say that he hasn't? But if you look at the roster that he was coaching in LA, there was no young guys. He's coaching LeBron, he's coaching Dwight, he's coaching Rajon Rondo. So these are all guys, again, that were in his era. These are guys that probably understand him and he respects them because they were all-star players when he was still playing. So I think the thing I would say about Luka, and you guys know way better than I do, and certainly your listeners will as well, particularly the ones that followed him internationally. But from what I know and from what I speak to people, I wouldn't say European coaches go easy on their players, right? I mean, and this is some serious coaching that goes on over there. So I would be shocked if Jason Kidd came in and coached this team up really hard, whether Luka would be shocked by that. I mean, I'm sure he's experienced that in his past. So maybe that's a benefit.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think that's going to be okay. I'm not worried about Luka and Jason Kidd in this situation. But you mentioned Miran Fader's book. There's a couple of things that I want to talk about. And then Jason Kidd spoke about that book. So we want to bring it up just a little bit here. And then we'll talk more about maybe a Dirk Giannis comparison from this past year. So we'll get into that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about rockauto.com. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models of cars, it's impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning? Like, they ask you questions about your car. I don't know that. Is it a ZE? Is it an EX? Like, I don't know. Just tell me. I have this car. Tell me what parts it fits for it. rockauto.com tells you that. You save time. You save money. You go there. You just search all the stuff for your car. You can go back and forth. You can just do it on your phone right in front of your car, so you can see all the stuff and then see all the parts available for your car or truck. They have everything you need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even a new carpet. Go there and check it out. See everything available for your car or truck. Their website is easy to explore. They have the solution for your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On, and they're happy to hear about us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, Isaac, we're back here with Kane Pitman. We've been talking about Jason Kidd. You mentioned Miran Fader's book, and I've gotten through a decent chunk of it so far. And there's some interesting Jason Kidd nuggets in there, specifically a story about, and we haven't mentioned this, we haven't talked about this book a lot on the podcast yet because neither of us have gotten through the whole book, but there's a specific instance about, we were talking about him, Jason Kidd, coaching hard, and there's a specific instance about, coaching on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve and just really pushing the guy super hard, pushing Larry Sanders to the point where he had to admit himself to the hospital, and basically his career ended right after that practice that they were running so hard. Mac Engel, after Reggie Bullock and Tim Hardaway Jr. and them were introduced the other day, walked up to Jason Kidd. Isaac and I were standing there. We watched him do this, walked up to Jason Kidd and said, "What do you think about this book, this Miran Fader book?" Jason Kidd looks at him and says, "Did Giannis write it?" Kidd said, when I asked him if he had read it. Not sure if he was asking rhetorically. I answered, it was written by Miran Fader. He's like, "I'm waiting for Giannis when he writes it," Kidd said. "I'm aware of the book, but if it's not from Giannis, I won't pay attention to it." What's your thought on that response from Kidd? Is it par for the course for Jason Kidd? Is that something expected, or did you find that interesting?
I'm very curious to see how he performs with the media this year. I'll say that. Look, I would say particularly in Milwaukee back in the day, and it's not knocking anyone that was working there, but it's a small market. The team wasn't winning a lot. I would say it's probably a place where back then you could have got away with not much attention, but there were certainly times where his answers were prickly, to say the least. And I would say that this is a continuation of that. And maybe he didn't know it was on the record, or maybe I don't know what the exact situation was right there. But the point of it all is that if he only got along with Giannis, what about the rest of the 14 guys on the roster? It's like you can get, and again, this will be the interesting thing with Dallas. He might get along with Luka, but what about the rest of the guys? Because if he doesn't get along with them, the situation isn't going to work out. So again, I haven't read the book. I'm sure there's more to the story than the excerpts that we've all seen, but you got to get along with everyone, man. You can't just be getting along with one guy.
But even just his response to that being like, if Giannis doesn't write it, then I don't care about it, right? Like, just to even answer it like that, yeah, defensive, and then also just, pushing off any kind of media, like, oh, any story that isn't written by that person, which, by the way, if it's by the player, then it's also has
Players
like
Tribune.
it also has a bias to it as well. I find that really interesting. Yeah, he only reads the Players Tribune, I guess.
Well, we were talking about this before we hit record, but that conversation between Mac and Jason happened after the Reggie Bullock, Sterling Brown presser on that Friday, because like Nick said, we were in that little, there were like 6 or 7 of us talking to Jason afterwards behind the press conference stage. And I didn't think any of that was on record. Like, I didn't record any of it on my phone. I didn't sit there holding my phone out.
I saw Dwayne holding up his phone recording. So I think he knew that Jason Kidd knew that he was being recorded.
No. Yeah. I'm not alluding to that. I was just saying we walked out of there talking about it, you and I, but we didn't talk about it I'm saying why we haven't talked about it on the pod until now. And then I seen where Mac wrote about it, and I was like, oh, okay, well, Mac, he was recording it, so he was on, he was actually asking him questions for the story. So, and Mac's great when it comes to those type of questions. So I just walked away saying, wow, he's really gonna like push off the book, because I think a lot of it, including myself, I wanted to know what he thought about the book, and because those were some pretty straightforward quotes from actual players. So, he's obviously discrediting Marin Fader in that, and the players' quotes on that. But I think I expected deep down for him to say like, hey, that was the past. I wish I could change some things, take some things back, but that wasn't his case on that. So
I always say this. I always think your introductory press conference should be the easiest one you have to do, because even if situations like that, just purely from a coaching perspective, all he needed to say is, yeah, I've learned a lot. Perhaps it was too close to my playing days, old school tendencies. I've grown. I've been around different players. It's been a good few years of learning for me. And everyone's like, oh, wow, that's great. It's a great quote. It's not hard.
And he made a point in that to talk about how close he still is with Giannis. And, if Giannis ever wants to brighter lights outside of Milwaukee, there's relationships.
You might have to get that trade done pretty quickly, because I don't know how long. Anyway.
Hey.
So speaking of Giannis, though, let's end here, because I think that this is interesting. Giannis just won a title. He stayed. He re-signed. We really wanted Giannis to come to Dallas, but he stayed, and we were glad that he did stay in Milwaukee. And he won a title there. He made it happen. Milwaukee's first title in forever, basically. And what does he become now for Milwaukee? Like, does he just become, does he sit on the Mount Rushmore of all Milwaukee athletes? Because Dirk, like, when he won that title in 2011, like, almost like leapfrogged all of the Cowboys, like the Dallas Cowboys. And I think people would say that he is a greater Dallas athlete. I think a lot of people would say he's a greater Dallas athlete than like Staubach or Aikman or, any of those guys.
He's right at the top. He's with the top names. And the thing about Giannis is that, and Dirk obviously was there for a little bit longer when he got his championship, but you guys understand it. When you draft a guy and you see him grow up and you see him develop and you see him lose multiple times before they get to that point, it really does add something, particularly in today's basketball, today's sport, where guys just don't hang around like that. Once they lose a couple of times, they're off to chase something a little bit easier. He had the great quote after Game 6 where he could have gone off and got an easy title in his words, but he stayed. And there's something special with that. And he's bought into the city big time. He's all over the place right now. He
literally bought the Brewers.
He's bought into the Milwaukee Brewers. So, I don't know. Who's to say whether he stays with the Milwaukee Bucks forever? But honestly, now that you got that title, we always sit here and say, well, you would love to get 2, you'd love to get 3, you'd love to get 4. But ultimately, nothing's ever going to be as special as the first one. Everyone understands that. And he got it. No one thought they were going to do it 50 years after the last one. I'm pretty sure that he's going to be loved for as long as he lives. That's for sure.
He'll never have to buy any Chick-fil-A nuggets ever again. People will buy them for him.
Well, Bobby Portis reckons he hasn't even pulled out his wallet since the title. So if Bobby Portis hasn't, I suggest Giannis probably hasn't.
Portis was the Deshaun Stevenson of the Milwaukee Bucks, right? The same way Deshaun was to the Mavericks. Like, you just following that whole thing, you could just tell he was that guy. I was waiting for him to wear a shirt like, how's my C3P taste or something like.
When Giannis said that quote after winning the finals, it was such a win for small markets everywhere. because every organization, is looking at their star saying, look at that quote. Like they're playing that quote and saying, that's you want that. Like that's the ultimate feeling right there, that you take a whole city and your team and win that championship compared to going and win it with other players. And I even look, obviously we talk about Luka and stuff a lot too. I mean, we're like Luka, Giannis, these are two of the biggest faces of the league. And I think it's really cool to just see acknowledge the international game of that, of how close would the game, I feel like we're the closest now than ever. If we did a USA versus world instead of an all-star game, that would be a legit game. That'd be fun.
Yeah, and I know you guys were obviously following the Olympics super closely. I obviously was as well for, with Australia. And, it's fun. It's fun to see these teams and the lineups they can put together. And I don't think it should be a surprise that we saw Giannis win 2 MVPs. We saw Nikola Jokic last year win the MVP. Obviously, Luka's going to be come into the season one of the favorites this year as well. It's no surprise. These European players are coming in. They're starting to take over the league. They're winning MVPs. And I think in general, those guys, more than the American players, seem likely to stick around with their franchise. And look, Dirk was one of those guys as well. Giannis, obviously the same. And we'll see what happens with Luka. I think most people would be hoping that he stays in Dallas, because I think it's good for the league.
Rudy Gobert is just going to stay there forever, and we're just going to continue to talk about screen assists for the rest of time. And
Ginobili.
What?
Ginobili stayed?
Yeah,
in San Antonio.
Parker did not, though. There is a Tony Parker Charlotte Hornets jersey out there somewhere. Someone is wearing one at a Coachella.
I don't think Tony Parker needs to be considered with loyalty anytime soon.
Kane, you have any questions about the Mavs or anything that's been on your mind you've been thinking about just on now that we're finishing up here?
Well, I did listen to the podcast yesterday, and I am curious about the Goran Dragic situation, and I know you guys are all on Dragic watch, and I think it's going to be curious to see. I think another ball handler, another creator next to Luka would make a lot of sense, but he's getting on in age, so I am at least a little bit interested to know where the level of excitement would be with Goran Dragic. And Kyle Lowry was another player in a similar sort of age bracket. Do you guys get the sense that he has much left in the tank?
The thing for me is you don't need much, because they're not signing him to these 6-7 year deals anymore, right? You're signing these guys. I mean, Dragic if he gets bought out, it's a 1 year deal. You just need him for 1 year. Can he be good for that 1 year, right? And then you turn your sights to something else the next year. Kyle Lowry, can it be a 3 year deal for him? Can you give me 2 really, really good years, and then the last one that's maybe just a good year, an okay year? That's, I think, where we were. And just, you had to check the box of a veteran that's been there before, a secondary creator, and just somebody else to take the ball out of Luka's hands, basically. And those are the 2 guys that match that list, and there's not many this offseason. So those are the 2 guys they're really going after. As far as the excitement for Goran Dragic, we talked yesterday about that survey that Mavs fans took, and 70-something% are expecting Dragic to become a Maverick. So it's almost like an expectant now than it is we'd be excited if it happens. We'll probably be more relieved when it finally happens. Isaac, I don't know if you're in the same boat.
No, for sure. I mean, we just want it to be over at this point, and just him wearing a Mavericks uniform. And when I think about Dragic, I think back to the bubble when he was torching the Bucks on the way to
why you got on the way out? He had to do it. We just talked about glowingly about the title. You don't have to bring that up.
It was less than 2 years ago, he was playing in the finals. And like you pointed out on maybe yesterday's pod, that when he got hurt in the finals, that was a huge moment for Miami. So it's not the same as Lowry. We've used the baseball analogy a lot on this pod this offseason. Right now, we've both agreed they hit a single. It's not if they got Kyle Lowry, it would have been a triple. I think Dragic is maybe you're stretching into a double at that point. And if you could walk away from this offseason with Dragic and Reggie Bullock and you didn't really go in the hole a lot with some huge, massive contract, then I'm fine with that. So,
well, I know you want to wrap it up, but I will say that I do like the method that Dallas is going with in building a roster. I see some similarities with the Bucks. Milwaukee obviously signed Thanasis. Now they've picked up Yorgos Kalaitzakis late in the draft. So we're essentially slyly building the Greek national team in Milwaukee. And you guys, if you bring in Goran Dragic, perhaps you can start to
Igor on the bench.
Slovenian national team. So this is, I think it's smart business.
Mike Toby coming to camp.
We got to get Chanchar. We got to get Chanchar on the bench, and then
it's smart. It's smart.
Yeah, that's what we're doing over here. There you go. Go follow Kane. We'll put his Twitter bio and Twitter link in the description of this podcast or on YouTube. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs, Locked On Bucks.
Peace out.
Boom.